Your phone has been on Do Not Disturb for so long, you forgot it was ever on regular. Calls roll straight to voicemail. Voicemail is full, has been full since 2021. You're not mad at anybody in particular, you just don't feel like talking. Not to your brother, not to that cousin who still owes you $400, not to the boys you used to ride with. You're good. That's the line, right? I'm good. 2 words, whole conversation closed. I'm Franklin, and today we're sitting down with something I've watched happen to a whole lot of men in their late 40s and 50s. Black Gen X men who quietly cut everyone off and called it peace. Family, friends, the mother of your kids, the dude who stood next to you at your wedding. One by one, the circle got smaller until it was just you, the remote, and a plate. And here's the part most folks won't say out loud. It wasn't an accident. It was a strategy, a learned one, passed down, and it's costing you more than you think. Let me walk you through it. First, let's talk about what cutting people off actually looks like at this age. Because when you were 25, cutting somebody off was loud. You blocked them. You posted about it. You told the whole crew what happened and why you were done. There was drama. There was a final phone call where somebody said something they couldn't take back. At 48, 49, 53, there's no drama. There's no final phone call. There's just a slow fade. You stopped responding to the group chat. You skipped the cookout. You didn't go to the funeral. You went to the funeral, but you stood by the door and left before the repast. Your sister called 3 times, and you meant to call her back. You meant to. It's been 7 months. That's the Gen X cutoff. Quiet, polite, looks like being busy, looks like being tired, looks like a man who works hard and just wants to come home and not be bothered. And from the outside, nobody can really argue with it, because you're not yelling at anybody. You're not fighting. You're just not there. And the wild part is, you can do this for years before anyone notices. You can ghost your own family for a decade and still show up at Thanksgiving like nothing happened. Eat a plate, hug 2 people, and be in the car by 8:30. Nobody calls it estrangement. They call it, you know how he is. So how common is this, really? Because if you're sitting there feeling some type of way about being the one who pulled back, you might think you're an outlier. You're not. A researcher at Cornell named Carl Pillemer did a national survey of about 1,300 American adults and found that 27% of them were currently estranged from a family member. 27%. That works out to something like 68 million people walking around this country with somebody in their bloodline they don't speak to. You are not alone in that car ride home from the family function. Now look at it by generation. There's a survey out of Talkspace, reported by The Week, that breaks down no contact rates by age group. Boomers, about 20%. Gen X, 38%. Millennials, 50%. Gen Z, 60%. So Gen X isn't the loudest about it, but almost 4 in 10 of y'all have gone no contact with somebody in your own family. You just didn't make a TikTok about it. And here's where it gets specific. There's a 2023 study in the Journal of Marriage and Family by a researcher named Ren Ritek out of Ohio State. Across all adult children in the U.S., about 26% are estranged from their fathers, 6% from their mothers. Big gap. Now, when you split that by race, 2 things jump out. Black adults are about a quarter less likely than white adults to be estranged from their mothers. Mama stays in the picture. Black adults are about 3 times more likely than white adults to be estranged from their fathers. 3 times. Sit with that for a second. So if you are a Black Gen X man and your daddy is somebody you haven't talked to in 15 years, or somebody you only saw twice growing up, or somebody whose number you don't even have, you are sitting inside a documented pattern, a wide one. And patterns don't come out of nowhere. They come from somewhere and they go somewhere. They came from him and now they're moving through you. Which brings us to the part most folks won't say. The reason a lot of Black Gen X men cut people off so smoothly is because they watched somebody do it first. The blueprint was in the house. Carl Pillemer, that Cornell researcher, wrote a whole book on this called Fault Lines. And one of the things he kept finding in his interviews is that family cutoffs run in families. People in deep rifts would tell him their parents had a sibling they didn't speak to. Their grandparents had cousins nobody mentioned. There was always an aunt who we don't talk about, or an uncle who fell out with the family in '78 and never came back. The estrangement wasn't a single event. It was a habit being passed down, a learned coping move. When conflict got too loud, somebody disappeared. That was the family's way. If that was the model you grew up watching, then guess what tool you're going to reach for the first time your brother says something foul, or your homeboy lies to you about money, or your woman pushes you on something you don't want to talk about. You're going to reach for the disappearing act, because that's the move you saw work, or at least the move you saw end the noise. Now here's where it gets even sharper. Pillemer found something else worth knowing. The thing that keeps people estranged for years is mostly anxiety, not anger. People assume the cutoff man is over there mad, holding a grudge, building a case. He's usually not. What's keeping him on Do Not Disturb is the fear of what it would feel like to let that person back in and be exposed again, to be criticized again, to be told what he should be doing again, to be vulnerable again, and have it not go well, again. So it's the fear of what reconnecting would cost that's holding the wall up. That hits different, doesn't it? Now let's add this second layer, because the family pattern alone doesn't explain it. There's something else stacked on top, and it's specific to being a black man in America. There's a researcher at Stanford named Leslie Adams. She published work on racialized masculinity and black men's mental health. She sat down with black men and listened to how they talked about being a man, and what came up over and over was this ideal. You gotta be tough. You don't show what you feel. You handle yours by yourself. You don't ask for help. You don't lean on anybody. You are the rock. You are the wall. You are the one other people lean on. You don't get to be tired. Adams calls this racialized masculinity because it goes past the regular men don't cry stuff. It's shaped by being black in this country, where being seen as soft, scared, or needy can get treated like a problem instead of a human moment. So you learn early to lock it down. You learn early that the safest face is the blank one. You learn early that I'm good is a force field. And what she found is that this performance, being strong all the time, never letting anybody see the cracks, pushes men into isolation, into feeling like a burden when they need something, into not asking, into not reaching, into building a life where nobody actually knows what's going on with them, including the people in the same house. You stack that on top of a family pattern that already taught you to disappear when things got heavy, and you don't get a man who cuts people off because he's mean. You get a man who cuts people off because that's the only move he has left in the bag. Strong and silent, taken to its endpoint, is a one-man island. And the boys notice, or they don't because they're doing the same thing. Let's talk about the friend thing, because this one sneaks up on dudes. You used to have a tight 5, maybe a tight 7, the crew from the block, the crew from college, the crew from your first real job, and one by one, the calls slowed down. Somebody moved. Somebody got married and his wife didn't like you. Somebody started drinking too much. Somebody lost a parent and you didn't know what to say, so you didn't say anything. And then too much time passed and now it's weird. Somebody died and at the funeral you told the rest of the boys, we gotta stay in touch, we gotta do better. And then nobody did. There's a stat from Guidelight Health worth chewing on. About 30% of men reported having a real, private conversation in the past week where they shared something they actually felt with a friend. 30%. So 7 out of 10 men went a whole week, work, home, gym, errands, all of it, without one honest talk with somebody who's not their woman or their mama. And when men do hit a rough patch, they're less likely to reach out to a close friend than women are. The gap is something like 38% of men versus 54% of women. So if you're sitting there at 51 and you realize you haven't had a real conversation with another grown man in a month, you're not an outlier, you're average. That's what's scary about it. The cutoff is the default setting. Now here's where I want to be honest with you, because this isn't a you should feel bad video. Cutting people off works. Short term, it does. That's why men keep doing it. If your cousin is messy, blocking him stops the mess. If your daddy never showed up, going silent stops the disappointment of waiting for a call that's not coming. If your homeboy keeps borrowing money, going ghost protects your wallet. There are real situations where pulling back is the healthy move. I'm not about to sit here and tell you to let toxic people back into your life because of a study. A boundary keeps certain people out. A bunker keeps everybody out, including the ones who would actually show up for you if you let them. There's a difference between cutting off the one person who's actually hurting you and using the cutoff as your only tool for everybody. And the bunker has a price. Let me name it. There's a 2024 piece in the Journal of Black Psychology by researchers named Dennis and Zolnikov on emotional repression in Black American men. What they documented is that bottling it up, year after year, doesn't just sit there quietly. It shows up in the body. Higher risk of cardiovascular disease, higher risk of substance use, higher rates of anxiety and depression, strain in romantic relationships. The wall you built to keep the noise out is also keeping the pressure in, and the pressure has to go somewhere. It goes into your chest, it goes into the bottle, it goes into the woman who loves you but can't reach you. There's another piece, published through the NIH in 2024, on masculinity and African American men's mental health. It found that the self-reliance thing, handle it myself, don't need nobody, I'm good, was directly tied to men not going to get help when they needed it. Not therapy, not the doctor, not even a real conversation with somebody who could have helped. I'm good turns into, I'll deal with it, turns into, I should have gone 2 years ago. And then there's the loneliness piece, which is the quiet killer. The CDC says more than a third of American adults over 45 report feeling lonely. There's a long-running study published in Psychiatry Research that followed about 2,500 middle-aged men, and it found loneliness raised their cancer risk by about 10%, independent of other factors. The word sad doesn't cover it. We're talking about cancer risk. The isolation has a body count. So when you're sitting at home on a Saturday night, phone face down, nobody knowing what kind of week you really had, you're absorbing something. And the body keeps a tally. Let me hit one more layer because I don't want to skip it. There's a scoping review from 2025 on how patterns of harshness and inconsistent emotional availability in Black families can get passed down across generations. The point of that work isn't to blame anybody's mama or anybody's granddaddy. The people who raised your people were surviving things you and I read about in books. The point is that kids who grow up in homes where the adults are present but emotionally locked, or where discipline is the main language of love, learn to adapt. And one of the most common adaptations is withdrawal. Get small, get quiet, don't need much, don't ask for much, take care of yourself so nobody has to. That kid grows up, that kid is now you, with a mortgage and a bad knee. The withdrawal that kept him safe at 8 years old is the same withdrawal that's keeping his daughter from really knowing him at 25. The tool didn't get old, the tool got handed down. So what do you do with all this? I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go call everybody back. Some people you block for a reason. Keep them blocked. That part's fine. What I'd ask you to look at is the list. Make it in your head right now. Who have you cut off? Forget the toxic ones for a second. Think about the other ones, the ones you cut off out of habit. The brother you stopped calling because you didn't know what to say after his divorce. The friend who reached out twice and you didn't answer, and now it feels too late. The kid from your first marriage you haven't really talked to in 2 years, where nothing actually happened, and that's the problem. Those aren't enemies, those are people you let the pattern eat. And the pattern is older than you. It started before you were born. The question is whether it ends with you or whether your son inherits the same do not disturb. Pillimer's research, by the way, found that a lot of estrangements do get reconciled eventually. Not all, but a lot. The thing that holds people back from making the call is usually the fear of being the one who reached out and got nothing back. That fear is real. I'm not going to talk you out of it. I'm just going to point at it and say, that fear is what's running the show. You decide what you do with that. But hear me on this. The strong, silent, cut everybody off Black Gen X man is a survival strategy that worked for a long time in a country and in homes that didn't hand you a lot of other options. The strategy got the job done. It's just expensive. And the older you get, the more the bill comes due. In your blood pressure, in your marriage, in the seat at the table nobody saved for you because they stopped expecting you to come. You're allowed to keep the wall. Just check the door once in a while. Make sure it still opens. Make sure you remember how. We'll leave it there. The video on the screen, that's your next one. Tap it.